Well, good morning and welcome everyone to Falkirk Council Scrutiny Committee, Thursday, 14th of December. First item on the agenda is apologies. Do we have any apologies?
We do, Convener. We've got apologies from Councillor Robertson and Councillor Forrest.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Agenda item 3, minute of the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee held on 9th of November. It's pages 3 to 11 on your agenda papers. Can we agree the minute? Notes and nods, agreed. Any matters arising from the minute? No. Agenda item 4, role and action log, pages 12 to 14 on your agenda papers, and we'll go to Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Convener. There's 4 items in the role and action log, 3 of which relate to reports on today's agenda. The one which isn't on today's agenda is a report on deposit return system update. That's not due to come to the committee until November 2024, and I recall at the last meeting that the director gave an update on that, so I think that's just something that's just going to be sitting in the role and action log until the report comes next year.
Any questions on the role and action log?
Yes, Convener, thanks. I'm just looking for, have we had any feedback at all from the Scottish Government on it? I'm just curious. It's not a scrutiny question per se, but do we know if it's going to go ahead or whatever?
Mr. Bailey?
I wonder if it would be appropriate for Douglas to maybe answer that question. He's behind you.
Yeah, he's behind. That's pantomime time, eh? Mr. Garler.
Yeah. There's been no further update, Councillor, since the last report that was brought to Executive in November. So, as per the report provided to Executive, the scope of DRS excludes glass, and that position hasn't changed.
Thanks, Douglas. Chair.
Thanks very much. So the purpose of these specific performance reports and the questions that the Scrutiny Committee asks are to understand A, if the service is performing to an appropriate standard and trending in a positive direction, B, if the service is operating in the most efficient way, C, what areas of concern does the service currently face, and D, if an action plan is in place and is it being worked towards to mitigate any issues. Ultimately, the Scrutiny Committee, having asked questions of officers, is looking to determine what the appropriate course of action is. A, happy with progress and plan, therefore note the report. B, request a further performance report in a determined period of time. And C, recommend to the Council that a service be included in the scrutiny plan. So that's basically the background. So the first item on the agenda, the business proper, is agenda item 5. It's a report on pupil equity funding, pages 15 to 25 on your agenda papers, and I'll go to Miss J for that.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Provost and Committee, for the opportunity to bring back a pupil equity fund update to you. In advance, I'd like to thank Gail Martin, who's sitting with me today, for her work in producing this report and ongoing throughout the year with the central team and all of our schools, and also to the central team who work alongside us to play a part in managing the planning, monitoring of pupil equity funding and sharing the impact of effective interventions and strategies across our service. We're asking you to agree that our arrangements are appropriate and our approaches are appropriate, and to note that we have plans in place to continue to close the attainment gap. And before we start, thanks to Councillor McCabe for raising these questions. I'll provide some explanations of some unseen acronyms in the report, an education foible that we're guilty of. So in the report, in the section round about the stretch aims, it says FME, that stands for free meal entitlement. There's also an acronym that says COSD, which is the cost of the school day. And the VC acronym is for virtual comparators, which is our schools of a similar demographic in other authorities. So Section 4 provides you with some information about the Pupil Equity Fund administration and the autonomy given to head teachers. It also notes the cumulative total allocated to Falkirk since 2017. In Section 5, it outlines essential support provided to help school teams manage funds and also to align education's work with that of the council plan, for example, the Poverty Action Team, work with national organisations and partnership with our Education Scotland Attainment Advisor. Section 6 gives information about the broad general education, which is early level from nursery in P1 right through to 4th level in S3. We've deliberately focused on those stages and on those children and young people in quintile 1, which is deciles 1 and 2 of the Scottish Index for Multiple Deprivation, which is the most deprived 20%. Our tracking and monitoring of progress is robust. There's a central lift of predicted data 4 times each year, followed by quality assurance conversations. Evaluation of the impact of targeted interventions is continuous and undertaken through thematic reviews, quality improvement visits, and attainment conversations. HMI inspections also evaluate the impact of pupil equity funding spent on the attainment and achievement of those pupils who are entitled to it. We are pleased to see incremental progress being made. 1 and 2% may not seem a great deal, but in the current context, it is. Section 6.2 shares with you our core stretch aims trajectory. It's a positive step to be able to plan these over a 3-year period and to be able to work within a percentage bracket. And again, the percentage increase may seem small, but it's ambitious and based on the reality of our performance and progress over the last 5 years and the continued complexity of the education, community, societal and fiscal context within which we're working. Section 6.3 notes the partnership work undertaken with our Education Scotland Attainment Advisor, who's called Kit Gilbert. He's very much part of our team in Falkirk. He works directly with our schools and with our central team. He's also responsible for writing our triannual reports, which evaluate the effectiveness of our pupil equity funding on improving attainment and achievement of children and young people and how well we are working towards reducing the attainment gap. The Falkirk specific reports are not published nationally, but they do contribute to the overall national report. The link to the latest report is in the paper. If you're interested in seeing the Falkirk report for November 2023, let us know. We're very happy to share that with you. Ironically, it is titled Triennial Report 4. Section 7.1 and 7.2 note the efforts made to gather data and to use it to ensure appropriate priorities for action and intervention. This data is also shared with partner services to maximise the impact for families, in particular communities, and to avoid overload and duplication of services. Section 8 provides detail of the financial allocations, noting that the formula for allocations is based on 2018 figures for free school meals, and that those figures are now not an accurate reflection of the level of poverty in Falkirk due to such change in economic circumstances. It also notes, however, that the funding is still a huge benefit and support to our children and young people. Sections 8.3 to 8.6 provide information on legalities, accountabilities and risks, noting the need to have all budgets spent as there can be no carry forward. This is where the central support is particularly helpful in tracking the spend patterns of schools and supporting effective planning as necessary. In conclusion, we are noting our continued commitment to achieving our stretch aims, to sustain the current performance and improve attainment and achievement incrementally wherever we can. We will continue with our robust programme of support and challenge for our schools and to support and provide data to assist planning, evaluation, monitoring and measuring impact. And we hope that the case studies that we provided are helpful in exemplifying the Pupil Equity Fund in action and the differences it can make and how effective strategies can be and how they can be shared and replicated across our service. And we're both happy to take questions, Provost.
Thanks very much. I would just like to say that this agenda item represents a follow-up report which was requested at the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee on the 15th of December to ensure that attainment was continuing in a positive trend since the disruption caused by COVID. It's pleasing to see this does appear to be the case, and I would like to lead the committee and thank the officers for their ongoing hard work in this area. And one question that I have is page 17, paragraph 6.1. The table shows there has been continual improvement across several areas. So is there any benchmarking information available to the national average for these indicators?
So we do have benchmarking nationally. The stretch aims publication hasn't come through just yet, but there will be a publication of where we've done in our stretch aims against the national stretch aims collation. The problem is that there are 32 authorities who have similar stretch aims, but they're not all the same. But we do have Education Scotland will be publishing, as will the Scottish Government, that overall after the submission in September of our progress. We also benchmark against our performance against our collaborative colleagues, which is our Stirling, Clacks, West Lothian and us. So we look to see where we're performing. For us, we are performing as the same or better than those authorities in these areas. We also look at our performance over time. So as it says in the report, we look over 5 years worth of data to see where our stretch aims are against our general curriculum for excellence data. So that's the performance of all children across all stages in the BGE from early level right through to S4. So the benchmarking is done all of the time, but we do look nationally, we do look locally, and we do look across our RIC.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up for any questions from the committee. Councillor McCabe. Oh, sorry, we say.
No, thanks.
Councillor Richardson was. You want to go first, Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, David. Thank you. I didn't quite catch VC, the acronym.
It's the virtual comparator. So every authority is linked up with other local authorities which seem to have the same kind of population and demographic.
Thank you. And stretch aims, can you explain that for me? I mean, it's a term that's used repeatedly. What does it mean? Is it us stretching ourselves or?
Both, yeah. Gail?
It actually came out from improvement methodology strategies that were introduced through NHS first within Scotland that came from America, but it is there in order to make sure that there's an achievable target that should still be ambitious, but not one that you're setting up people to fail in the first place. And they've put the banding in this year, so that's the first, rather than having a fixed target, that it could be between a certain point.
That's great, thank you. I have a couple of questions. It's to do with, go through the report, resources in the first instance. Within the report, it identifies 4 dedicated officers. Now, there's obviously an expense attached to that. How is that funded? Is that funded within the Pupil Equity Fund, or is it externally funded?
It's externally funded through the Pupil Equity Fund. It's actually part of a wider fund, the Scottish Attainment Challenge Fund, which initially was authorities that had very high deprivation. There was 9 within Scotland initially, and we had 2 schools, and they had the Pupil Equity Fund. That was changed 2 years ago to create the Strategic Equity Fund so that all local authorities got a share of that pot, and we also have the Care Experience Fund. So the Strategic Equity Fund is the part that pays for those central officers. And up until this year, Falkirk was quite light in terms of the support that they created centrally in comparison to other authorities that were heavily funding bigger teams. Our funding actually increases over the years for that part of it as well. So where others may have a fixed amount because they were an Attainment Challenge authority, ours is building up until 2026.
Thank you, Gail. Excellent. I think it's a good report. I did have a wee issue about 1% and 2% potential increases, but I think in context you've explained, why. When I looked at it, I thought it's a wee bit unambitious, but no, I totally understand.
I think it does look small, and we see that if you're not immersed in all of this. However, to give you a bit of further context around about that, when we came out of the pandemic, initially, there were local authorities who had regressed.
Yeah.
So we hadn't. We managed to sustain where we had been. We've never dropped below where we were before the pandemic, and we're really proud of that. But at the same time, making progress at the moment, we are being ambitious in thinking that we can increase by 1 or 2%, because there are some times in some authorities where they're not increasing at all, or still you have negative impact. So we did want to explain that it isn't seeming to be ambitious, but it actually is when you look at the big picture and where other authorities, and when the stretch aims were being set in the first instance, they were only set for 1 year.
Mhm.
and we were asked to be ambitious. And we did say at the point, and the Scottish Government have listened to our feedback to say a stretch aim, as Gail has explained, is something that's set realistically over a bit of time. To set a stretch aim for 1 year is just a target.
Yeah.
So we had to be really careful again not to set ourselves a target that we were never going to achieve.
Yeah.
So we were ambitious, and we have achieved most of them. But we're really pleased that in these core areas of literacy and numeracy, we really have made that little bit of difference. If we can keep doing that, then that's our ambition, to keep doing it and never to let it stall or go back.
No, that's great. I do appreciate, that just as you say, some other local authorities may have regressed. We hadn't, and therefore the level of ambition, it may not. Looking at the tables, they may appear a bit unambitious, but in actual fact, I totally accept what you're saying, that every small increase is a step in the right direction. If I can move to page 19, implications 8.1, the £1,250 figure appears a bit arbitrary. Can you advise me how that's arrived at? Is it per pupil? And also, we talk about Falkirk schools. How many schools are we talking about, and how much goes to each school?
So the 1,250 was actually a slight increase. The initial allocation was £1,200. It's set by Scottish Government. It was changed last year to 1,250. However, what they are aware of, they're still working within the same funding pot. They are aware that poverty is increasing, which is why the triangle of calculation that was taken was from 2018 and not in our current preschool meal entitlement data. So that figure is set, although it's calculated from primary 1 to S3, and each school receives funding direct. So every school in Falkirk receives that funding direct, and whilst it's there for primary 1 to S3, or the calculations that is done on that, schools will be discrete in terms of looking at what is the need in terms of the target need, not just for those pupils that sit within decile 1 and 2, or those that are up to S3. They'll obviously support the senior phase, and there's some more work that's taken where schools have got early years within their building as well. But it was a calculation by Scottish Government created.
Thank you. I think the other comments we've got to make are basically just observations. The two examples that were given, Easter Carmuir's primary case study. The first table indicating the CFE levels is very good. Well done. Must congratulate you on that. And the breakfast provision, it's very interesting to note. The head teacher confirmed it was the breakfast programme that's obviously having a tremendous impact. Do you know if we intend rolling this across out across the council? I mean, I think it's something that I'm sure through the convener's indulgence, we will be recommending, I would think. But are you aware that we're considering?
It's part of the work that we're doing with the schools. So as well as within clusters, our schools sit within neighbourhood groups. So Easter Carmuir sits in neighbourhood group 7 with highest deprivation. The head teacher and her staff have actually shared a lot of this within that neighbourhood group in particular, given the demographics that they sit within. And this actually case study came up because of a conversation that I was working with that group to have, where they were saying, we're in a similar scenario, what is it? And the cost is actually relatively small in terms of how that's run on an annual basis, and for the initial setup. So there's been quite a few of those schools that have been in to visit, and they're looking at their PEF plans are in place this year, but what can they do and how would that work within theirs? Because although we could perhaps be prescriptive to say this is a model that's worked in this school and we'd like to see that rolled out, what we're asking schools is to consider their own communities and their pupils' needs, and maybe this could be a way. So we will share those good stories, we will make sure they understand that emerging practice, to then see how could they adapt it, and we will of course go in and support and advise and help them with their data to say this is where we've seen the difference, we've got the data to back that up. Never mind just actually that change within the pupils' behaviour as well, because that was the initial change that the school's seen, and it's about the children being ready to learn and that deeper learning that can take place. Yeah. But yes, we're not prescribing it across schools, but we're certainly making sure we're sharing, and we're trying to do much more of that this year as well.
That's great to hear. I mean, even that small level of autonomy that schools are talking amongst themselves and are recognising these positive movements. Yeah, I just wanted to say that the attached table indicated some excellent progress, and very well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCabe. Councillor Richardson, did you want to come in?
Thanks, Provost. No, I was going to ask about Easter Carmuir. I think it's a fantastic project that's going on, and I would agree with Councillor McCabe. I think it's something that could be and perhaps should be rolled out through other schools as well. I think it's shown great. The attainment, achievements, the figures are absolutely fantastic. So I think it's a great pilot project, but that was just what I was going to ask as well.
Thanks very much. If it works, roll it out. I guess it's monitoring and see how it goes. Any other questions? I think we'll now go to Councillor Sinclair as a portfolio holder for any comment.
Thank you, Provost. I'll keep it brief, because I think some of the questions have raised and elicited really positive answers, and I think the report in itself, as Councillor McCabe rightly identified it, as a good report and shows incremental, sustainable progress. And I think it's probably important to bear in mind that incremental, sustainable progress within the current context is absolutely the right thing. I think managing expectations is part of everybody's role here, and that if we're seeing small progress that's sustainable over a number of years, that's more positive, and it shows the impact that it's having on the outcomes for our children and young people right across the school estate. I think when you look at the fact that we've had since 2017 in this area over £26 million in funding, I think it's right to acknowledge that, but it's also right to acknowledge the fact that the funding is just one part of the story, and it takes an incredible amount of effort from not just young people and children to be receptive to the opportunities that are available through it, but also to the dedicated hard work and professionalism of our teams of teachers and central staff right across the council area. And I'd like to add my thanks to Rona, Gail, their teams, all the teachers that have been involved in that. There are so many positive things going on right across our school estate that I think it's important for everybody to understand that, and that some of the things that we hear out with the council area can sometimes not reflect the picture that's going on locally. I just wanted to put that out there, and all that remains for me to say is to thank everybody again, and to wish everybody a restful Christmas break. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks very much, Councillor Sinclair. I would think I would echo everything you've said there. It's a really positive report, a good news story, trending in the right direction, ticking all the boxes, and we do acknowledge these things these improvements, these incremental improvements don't just happen. There's a lot of effort goes on in the background and a lot of participation to make this happen. So we do appreciate that, and we thank you for coming along today. So just leave me to say, we've got two recommendations. One is to note the impact made to closing the gap, and note the plans in place to continue to close the gap. So can we agree with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks very much for coming on. Much appreciated. Thanks very much. And have a nice Christmas as well. So we'll now move on to agenda item 6, Roads Performance Report. and it's pages 26 to 36 on your agenda. So the Scrutiny Committee called for this report as members were concerned at the feedback they were receiving from constituents regarding issues relating to roads. The committee wished to investigate whether this feedback would also be highlighted within performance report. Having read the report and while acknowledging that positive work has been undertaken from increased investment, the committee is minded to recommend to Council that the road service be included in the scrutiny plan to investigate how the service can operate in a period of financial constraint. However, the committee notes that a review of the service has been called for and therefore more information is required on the scope of this review before an informed decision can be taken regarding the scope of this review and how it will be presented to members and the timescales for the completion of any review provided. So we know a review's coming and it will almost be remiss. We can ask questions today, but we get the full picture because the report, I believe, will take about 6 months. But I'll leave it at that and I'll go over to yourself, Douglas. Mr. Garner.
Thanks, Chair. And before I provide a summary of the report, Chair, I'd just like to pass on my thanks to David Mealy and the team at Roads for pulling the report together. David obviously joins me today, and if there are any questions from members today, David will assist in that.
Can I just say, I think, having read the report, it's a fairly frank and honest report. You know, it lays everything out as it is. Nothing hidden. It says, here's where we are, here's where we need to be.
Yeah, thank you. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update on the current performance of the road services in relation to planned, routine and reactive maintenance for carriageway, footway and street lighting assets. The road carriageway is the largest and most valuable asset for which Falkirk Council is responsible, measuring a length of 993 kilometres with a gross replacement cost of £1.1 billion. The service is also responsible for the footway and path network, which is over 1,000 kilometres, and all street lighting assets, including approximately 27,000 street lights and 1,500 illuminated signs. Overall, between carriageway, footways and street lighting, a total expenditure of £8.12 million was invested into the planned routine and reactive maintenance of these assets in financial year 22-23. This is a higher investment than in a normal year, as it contained the last portion of an additional £7 million of investment into road structural maintenance approved by the Council in the 2021 budget. From the £8.12 million invested, 85% was spent in carriageways, with the remainder spent on footway and street lighting. A further £675,000 was spent on our winter maintenance provision. Road Services is committed to road asset management planning, which formalises strategies, defines service standards, and ultimately aims to ensure resources are allocated in the most efficient and effective way possible. Table 4.1 within the report highlights the carriageway and footway key performance indicators at the 21-22 and 22-23 performance against targeted standards. Whilst there have been improvements in performance since 21-22, roads are still working towards achieving the required standard with respect to repairing reactive defects. Pleasingly, however, additional capital funding and subsequent planned maintenance investment has led to road services outperforming targeted standards across its classified A, B and C networks, with the unclassified network falling just short. Falkirk's road condition trend line indicates that the full network has improved over the past 16 years, and Road Services anticipates a further modest improvement for the upcoming 22-24 Scottish Road Maintenance Condition Survey due to the additional investment. However, it is anticipated that further progress on the road condition will reduce in the coming years as the road capital budget reverts back to baseline levels. Whilst the improving road condition is positive, as highlighted within the report, the Council currently has 329 kilometres of carriageway network that requires maintenance treatment, with an estimated cost of approximately £35 million. The annual commitment funding of approximately £3.5 million will not significantly improve this position. Cost projection tools are used to predict road condition over a 20-year period using alternative budget figures and treatment types and contained within an annual status and outline report. Options report, or ASOR for short. Work is currently ongoing to draft an updated ASOR and is due for completion early this year. In terms of routine maintenance, the report highlights the current status of the service's gully cleaning regime. The service moved to a risk-based approach, so that data-led approach to managing routine and reactive maintenance digitally on tablet devices could improve effectiveness and efficiency. However, it is appreciated that improvements still need to be made in this area. Given the current challenges, the report proposes that a full review of the Council's gully cleaning maintenance programme is undertaken in order that an options appraisal report can be brought forward for consideration by senior members and senior officers. Elected members and senior officers. The report also notes the overall performance of street lighting. Falkirk Council has carried out a Spring to Save investment and is currently 99% through the LED conversion programme. Over the past 10 years, more than 26,500 streetlights have been fitted with LED white light source lanterns. This has significantly reduced street lighting's total annual energy consumption, reduced our budget spend, and significantly cut our carbon emissions. Fundamentally, Chair, the report provides an overview of the performance of the road service in relation to planned, routine and reactive maintenance, with the key points being: increased investment has helped us improve the condition of our road network, resulting in our best road condition score in 16 years. Current committed investment will not be sufficient for the service to build on that good condition score, and it's highly likely that a decline in the network condition will appear in the coming years. It is proposed a report is produced to show various investment options and the likely impact these will have on road condition over the next 20 years. Further consideration must be given to the performance in routine and reactive works, most notably in making defects safe within response time and reviewing the risk-based approach to gully cleaning maintenance. And lastly, it is proposed that a gully cleaning options appraisal report is drafted for consideration by members. And that's a summary of the report, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. I was right in saying there are further reports coming forward. Right, that's going to be what, 6 months or so? Something like 6 months. Okay, well, just to open it up for questions, I'm just, before I say, open it up, Councillor Gardner, are you going to put your camera on? When you're online, you're meant to join the meeting, you're meant to have your camera on.
No, apologies, I can't have my camera on. I'm in a secure situation, so.
Okay, respect that. Open it up for questions. Councillor Richardson.
Yep, thanks for the report. That's a fairly frank report, and I welcome a report coming forward in the future as well. It's just basically on the attempt to secure the services of a roads manager, with 3 attempts to try and fill the position and still unsuccessful. Can you maybe explain the reasoning behind that, or what's been done differently to try and secure or try and fill that position? Because I think it's quite an important position that we really need filled, and if we are having reports moving forward, that should maybe be somebody like that who's involved as well.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Richardson. I fully agree with you. It's an absolute key post within the service. It's one that myself and David are working hard to appoint. As you correctly state, there have been a number of advertisements for the post. Most recently, myself and David had identified a preferred candidate, and I'd hoped to be sitting in front of you today making an announcement that we had indeed secured the roads manager. Unfortunately, the candidate pulled out at the very last minute, disappointingly. However, myself and David are fully committed to going back out to the market. We have been working with colleagues from Solace to raise the profile of the posts. It's a very attractive position, but I'm confident in the coming months that we will be successful in appointing that key position.
Just a follow-up, was there any reasoning why the person withdrew at the last minute, or did they have another position to go to, or was it?
I believe it was a personal matter.
Any other questions? Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, convener. This was a peculiar report. I was very pleased to get it. The honesty contained within it is very welcomed. There's a number of concerns it raises to the Scrutiny Committee, and as conveners already alluded to, we'll be looking for further reports to come back to the committee. And in support of that, I'm going to go through a couple of wee kind of questions that and observations, and I would hope, gentlemen, you take them away and maybe include them in, you know, the future report. So again, there'll be a few questions, but there'll be a few observations as well, because I genuinely thought it was a very honest report. I really appreciated that. I felt it was great. First question, it's under 3.5. It's the annual committed funding of approximately £3.5 million for the coming years. Can I clarify, is this £3.5 million per annum, or is that across?
Yes, that's per annum.
That's per annum. Yep. Thank you, David. Councillor Aitchison just asked the question I was going to ask regarding the recruitment of the manager. I'm pleased to hear that we've heard it from other departments within the council, the difficulty of filling posts and whatever. But it appears that we were always there. Personal reasons, totally understandable, but we're still in the market, and it looks as if we could have that position. That's a positive thing. Thank you for that. If I could move to 4.3, 6,079 transactions, which became 3,282 actionable defects. That's an almost 50% difference. Can I ask why? What reported defects are not actually defects?
It's not always that they are not defects. It's the large majority of the case is the fact that they're duplicate defects. So currently this financial year, we have just under 7,000 inquiries, but 4,000 of those have been duplicate inquiries. It's just multiple reporting of the same defect.
That's great, David. Wish all my jobs were as easy as that, well, they were duplicates. Move on to page 29, paragraph 4.4. A larger planned maintenance programme. It actually seems a no-brainer to me. Can you give me any idea why we're not continuing in this vein? Is it budgetary pressures or?
In the main, yes, it's budgetary pressures. So, as noted within the report, there was an additional £7 million worth of funding approved in 2021. So we've utilised that over the last 3 years' maintenance programmes, which has allowed us to, as the report says, surface more area of road. And the more permanent surfacing that we can do, the less inquiries and defects that we can deal with. And whilst that's the ambition going forward, when we revert back to our baseline budget, our roughly £3.5 million per year, we're not allowed to surface as much length of road, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's what I thought it may have been, you know. And it, again, you know, I'm saying it's a no-brainer for me, you know, that with that element of extra funding, you are able to roll out this extra work, and us getting councillors getting that information, it allows us to put a bit of pressure on relevant parties to try and see if we can, you know, look, here are the benefits. This is the cost. If we don't do it, the costs start to go this way. Can we not try and balance this up? So it's beneficial to us as councillors if we get this information that we can go and try and support you guys in your job. 2 points here, 4.6 and 4.7. I wrote this last week. I'm just trying to refresh my memory. Yeah, the land resurfacing, the 3.92%. Is there any way that we could increase that figure? It just seems a wee bit low. Or again, David, is it budget?
Budgets are a big part of that, yes. It's just trying to show the vastness of the network that we need to maintain. So whilst we've had that additional funding, and last financial year we surfaced almost double what we usually surface in a normal year, it's still a very, very small portion of our network. As we build the network's condition, we can get more length by choosing different types of treatments. So we can look at a bigger surface dressing type programme that you can get larger areas, but it's the intervention levels on that particular road, as you need your condition to be much higher than the areas where we need to surface just now. So because the areas where we need to surface just now require more structural type works, you get less for your money, effectively.
4.7. The maintenance of footways and pathways. And again, this equates to only 0.18% of the entire footway. That just seems dreadfully low. Are you just going to repeat the same?
Yes, effectively, yes. So the vast majority of our structural road maintenance budget has to go on carriageways to try and maintain some sort of condition. What I would say in terms of footways is we don't have the same robust data carriageways. So as Douglas mentioned earlier, we have the Scottish Road Maintenance Condition Survey that's done annually. So we have a lot more solid data in terms of what the condition of our road carriageway network is. We don't have the same for footways, and it is difficult when we have a smaller budget and we need to prioritise the carriageway network. But we do appreciate that we need to have a full consideration of the footpath and footway network as well.
Thank you, David. 4.16, it's to do with the gully cleaning. Obviously with climate change and whatever the impacts that that's having on, drainage and whatever. It's basically an observation for me. The downward trend in gully cleaning, I think we need to see it being reversed, because again, we're only creating problems downstream to use. We can move to 4.20. This has got to do with this risk-based approach to servicing these assets. What are the safety implications for that? You are identifying that as a risk-based approach, so I've got a wee bit of concern that there could be safety implications in it. Could you throw any background information onto that?
Yeah, sure. In previous years, quite a few years ago, we had a gully cleaning regime where, through our road maintenance hierarchy, we split roads per risk rating. So our strategic and main distributor routes are our highest level routes, and they were on our schedule to be cleaned twice a year, and all other gullies within the network were supposed to be cleaned once a year. Given that we have 35,000 gullies, with those two routes being cleaned twice a year, that equated to 40,000 cleans per year. So where we currently stand, resource-wise, we do not have the capacity to undertake that. So the risk-based approach, it's about us understanding what our levels of service are and understanding, being risk-aware rather than risk-averse, building up with this data, and we've moved everything web-based, and we have tablet devices to capture this data.
we can start through our asset management processes, start capturing the history behind each of these gullies or each of these locations, and we can start building up a picture in terms of what are our more problem areas, not just in terms of the gully blocking, but the existing constraints and the existing environment that they are around as well. So whilst there's safety implications, because we have the data at our disposal, or we're still collecting that data to have at our disposal, we can make informed decisions and be risk aware and focus on areas that need it more than others. With the old regime, we could be cleaning a gully once every single year, and it may not need cleaned for every 2 years, whereas there's other gullies that may need more attention 2 or 3 times a year. So that's the approach that we're trying to take just now, so we can use our resources in the most efficient and effective way and target the areas that are most in need.
No, I appreciate that, David. And any incident that happens elsewhere, you know, will be for a one-off type reason or whatever, like, you know, but where you feel through the data you've identified the kind of critical areas you're targeting, it's very pleasing to hear. The 4.22 talks about the options appraisal. Can you? I think the convener suggested that are we looking at 6 months or something like that? Just
I would say roughly about 6 months. Work has already started with that. I've had meetings with the management team just yesterday to look at current resources and how we prioritise the current resources. But work is already underway to look at various options in terms of what standard is required for our service delivery and gully cleaning maintenance. So I would say roughly 6 months, but I can certainly come back to you with a firmer date once we get a little bit more through that report.
I don't think there's any specificity that you have to come back. You know, if we get to hear through the system, I mean, we will obviously be looking for this coming back to scrutiny. So I was just looking for a rough ballpark figure, but 6 months is fine, yeah. And my last observation is on paragraph 4.25. I just think it's very good, you know, this move towards the LED lighting and the savings and whatever is just is very good news. So all in all, to echo the convener's comments at the start here, Councillor Aitchison's comments, it's a very honest report, which I genuinely, I'd much rather see that, you know, and don't get me wrong, had I been an officer and there's a wee bit of, we need to, you know, kind of cover up this or whatever, I get that, you know, it's human nature, but coming here, giving us the information, giving us honesty where things are working, things are not working, it allows us as councillors to try and support you guys. Thank you very much, I really appreciated it.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. Any other questions? I would just like to echo that it is a honest and frank report, and it's one of the best reports I've seen on roads since I came to the council, and it's outlined everything, and following the quarterly meeting that I had with these the other day, I also saw that there's a lot of other issues such as pavement, parking, 20 mile per hour, it's traffic safety, car park, and there's so many other issues within roads that I didn't really quite understand. But you can see the direction of travel, you've been honest about it, and it's good to see that we've got the best condition score in 16 years, and I'm glad to see that the 7 million that was invested back in 2021 has made some difference. But I think it does come down to budgets as well, that if that's no increase, you know, we're going to start going backwards. We've made good progress. But I just wanted to ask, you know, what would be the scope of the review that's going to come forward, and how would that be presented to members, and what would be the timescale? I think Councillor McCabe indicated that, and maybe be 6 months. So would we be getting a report back here maybe in a year's time, or when would you imagine that we've got to agree, the group's got to agree, the committee's got to agree if we want the report back in a year or if it's 6 months, but we need to be guided by yourself how long the review will take. And does the review, not just Gully, the reviews the whole of the roads?
Yeah, so within the report, we're proposing to come back with 2 individual reviews, one for our capital investment for road surfacing and footway surfacing in the form of an annual status and options report. And that will outline various different types of funding options, whether we remain at our baseline budget or our steady state figure or the gold standard in terms of really improving the network. So that will be contained within that. And then the other one is our gully cleaning maintenance regime. So whilst those 2 are separate individual reports that we can bring forward in the next 6 months, we would also be open to coming back in a year's time with a similar performance type report to show if there's been improvements in what we've outlined within this report.
Okay. So would the committee be? Oh, I nearly said Councillor Benny. Mr. Benny.
Thank you, Provost. Just to say, it would be my expectation that the reports that David just referred to would be coming probably to executive or council, not back to scrutiny. By all means, I think David, as he was saying there, we'd be happy to bring another report based on performance in 12 months' time if scrutiny committee was in favour of that.
Okay, thanks very much. So would the committee be minded that a report comes back in 12 months' time?
Yes. No, I'm not minded, but yes, we'd like one back.
12 months' time.
I agree.
Councillor McKay?
I'm happy to see it coming back in 12 months' time. I just have concerns that you know, as a scrutiny committee, we're identifying some issues. We're raising some issues, and I feel that they should come back to the scrutiny. I take on board, you know, what Mr. Benny's saying, you know, about the executive, but we're raising these issues. I think they should come back to the scrutiny committee for us to have another look at it, and whether, I'm only throwing this out here, whether we could have a 6 months interim report to see how progress is going. If you come along and say, you know, in another 6 months, you will have everything ready for you, that'd be great, you know, but I still feel it should come in front of the scrutiny committee, convener.
Okay. Mr. Perry. So that I'll bring Mr. Benny in first.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, it's my view that the reports that David has just alluded to there will require a decision, and that decision, in my view, would need to be, you know, taken by executive or council. I'd really implore the scrutiny committee not to ask officers to bring duplicate reports that, you know, to this committee as well as to those committees, when this committee won't be able to take a decision, but members of this committee will be able to read the reports that would go to those other committees. And I think in terms of performance within 6 months, I think one of the benefits of this very honest report is that it illustrates quite clearly that without additional funding, the performance of the roads in Falkirk is likely to be steady state at absolute best, and therefore I'm not sure that we would learn terribly much by a report within 6 months beyond what we've just outlined in this report, which I hope is really clear for elected members. But my central point was more, you know, given the time that it takes for officers to prepare reports and appear at committees, I'd really ask if we could just take those other reports to the decision-making body rather than to both those committees and this committee.
I think Councillor McCabe makes a fair point. We're in the scrutiny committee and we're asking questions, and we're saying we're not going to drill down too deeply because there's a report coming forward, and that was part of the conversation we had, that we would wait till a further report comes forward so we can ask further questions. There might not be many questions to ask, but at the same time, it may well be we wait until the report goes to the executive, has a decision, and then comes to the scrutiny later on. I think that's only fair. You know, that we're sitting here talking about this and then we've not got any recourse to have a discussion on how things have improved. So I think once it's been to the exec decision made, I really think it should come back to the scrutiny committee for a discussion.
I think just to echo your comments, convener, and also to take on board what Mr. Benny is saying too, you know, the executive is the decision-making body of the council. Maybe we're moving towards, because we're looking to new structures, we're expanding the structure of the executive and the scrutiny. You know, it may go some way to allaying my fears, and I think your fears as well, Provost. You know, that as a scrutiny committee, we're raising these issues, and we're looking for solutions to be brought forward, but it's going to another body. So I do think we still need that input into it. But I'm hoping that, you know, with the new executive and scrutiny bodies, we may go some way to kind of alleviating what Mr. Benny quite rightly says. You know, I mean, it is the executive is the decision-making body. I totally accept that. Thanks, Provost.
So we would be asking for a report back here in about a year's time. That would be our expectation. So there's a lot of good stuff in the report, you know, that's particularly on the gullies and the reduction in energy consumption towards our net zero. That's good to see that. And so a lot of positive in there as well. And it's stated that it's a great report, frank and honest. We've got a good snapshot of where we are and where we want to be. I think that's really important to have these frank reports. I think it's quite refreshing, to be honest with you. So I'll now go to, he's gone. I was going to go to Councillor Garner to see if he had any comments. Okay, so go back to the recommendations.
I think it just helps. I think the recommendations relate to note or call for further reports, but I think you've agreed that you're going to note the report and ask for a performance report in a year's time. That's
it. Aye, okay. Okay, so thanks very much for coming along. Really appreciate the input and honesty, and I'm sure everybody in the committee would echo that. Thank you very much.
I would certainly echo that. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor McCabe. So we'll just have a wee 10-minute recess for a comfort break. Okay, welcome back everyone. We'll now go to agenda item 7, which is the Building Maintenance Performance Report. It's pages 37 to 43 on your agenda. I'd just like to say the report was requested by the Scrutiny Committee as members were concerned at the feedback they were receiving from constituents and wanted to further explore issues and seek solutions. It's clear from the report that despite the hard work that is ongoing within the service, there has been a struggle to meet demand in several areas, and this is evident through the increasing procurement of third-party contracts. The report itself outlines that this approach has led to varying levels of success. Within the service review section of the report, it's stated that the current performance levels are not meeting the expectations of tenants and are below what management would consider to be acceptable levels of service. Upon reading the report and having received feedback from constituents, the committee agrees with this view. It is clearly shown that issues relating to high vacancy numbers, the difficulty to recruit staff and high absence rates have impacted on service provision and subsequently the culture within the workplace. A solution to this must be found. The committee is pleased to note that an external service review has been commissioned, with work starting in November to identify best practice and a service improvement plan moving forward. This will rightly include consultation with staff, trade unions, housing services and human resources, and the review will be concluded in spring 2024. The committee, when calling for this performance report, was minded that it retained the right to recommend to Council the inclusion of the service in its scrutiny plan. In light of this report, the performance aspect would have warranted inclusion. However, as the service will over the next 6 months be part of an external review, inclusion within a scrutiny plan is not currently deemed appropriate. Instead, the committee will, after questions, consider whether an update on outcomes of the review can be provided, and in addition, a performance review be presented a year from now. This would allow approximately 6 months of a hopefully improved service upon completion of the review. So we'll now move to Mr. Gardner to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I'd like to thank Robert Fotheringham and the management team at BMD for assisting in pulling this report together. The purpose of this report is to provide committee with an overview of current performance levels within the Building Maintenance Division. The report also provides detail of an external review of the service, the recommendations of which are designed to improve service delivery. As per 4.1 of the report, Council has a housing stock of circa 16,500, and the division is responsible for the turnaround of void properties, maintenance and capital projects, including roofing and roof casting. Highlighted in 4.3 of the paper, the service has struggled to retain existing and attract new staff. There are a number of factors that are likely to contribute to this, including a skill shortage and a strong construction sector that offers higher salaries. Section 5 of the report covers service performance, and members will note that the number of void properties sitting with the service has reduced by approximately 300 over the past 12 months. This improvement has largely been delivered via framework agreements. The report does, however, note some quality issues that have arisen, and this can be time-consuming to management and cause frustration for the tenant. 5.3 of the report covers general maintenance. Due to the inability to run reports, the service has been unable to provide scrutiny with an up-to-date figure. On that, commitment has, however, been made to meet the 23-24 annual returns to the housing regulator in April, and we'd be happy to share this detail with members at that point. Moving on to disabled adaptations, unfortunately, as detailed, the number of these outstanding requests has increased, and the recent procurement exercise for these services failed to attract any bidders. Whilst this is far from ideal, the service is working with colleagues at procurement to secure these services, and when the service becomes aware of any priority cases, there will be a focus on turning this around for the tenant. 5.7 to 5.10 of the paper covers kitchens and bathrooms. Both kitchens and bathroom installations are carried out via a framework contract. The past 12 months has seen a reduction in the number of kitchen installations by approximately 160, and discussions are ongoing with the housing asset team to create a kitchen installation programme to help further reduce that number. With regard bathrooms, the paper notes that priority has been given to kitchens, as this is where the customer demand is most. However, the service is in discussion with contractors on how current waiting times can be further improved. The report acknowledges that the service isn't in a great position at the moment in terms of staffing, absenteeism or performance, and as highlighted, there are many reasons for that. Because of this, external advisors ARC have been commissioned to carry out a review of the service, firstly looking at culture within the division, including improving communications and how to create a greater sense of team. As well as culture, the review will cover structures, how we can be better structured to meet the demands of our customers, improve processes and systems. The review will benchmark the service against similar functions across the UK, cover what best value looks like and how we can achieve it. Essential to the review is input from our stakeholders, including our teams at the Building Maintenance Division, housing services, trade unions, and indeed our tenants. So in conclusion, Chair, the division is carrying a high number of vacancies and absences and is struggling to retain staff. The service also has a high reliance on contractors. Performance isn't where we want it to be. Given this, an external review has been commissioned covering structures, systems and cultures within the workplace. The review is based upon the Public Service Excellence Model, the purpose of which is designed to provide the service with a pathway towards achieving best value, both for the council and our tenants. And that's a summary of the report, Chair.
Thanks very much, Mr. Gardner. I think yet again that it's a frank and honest report. It states, where we are and what we're trying to do, trying to improve, and it's going to be a journey. So first of all, I'll just go to Councillor Binney first, and then Councillor Anslow.
Thank you, Provost. I want to put it a little bit in context first, obviously. I do have an observation and I have a question actually at the end. I really do welcome this refreshing, transparent report, and it's good to note the current performance of the service and the steps that are being addressed to improve performance. I must admit, I've every admiration for the workforce in BMD having to cope with the many challenges presently, and I also appreciate their desire to help their communities as best as they can. The collaboration between myself and BMD has always been excellent, and I'm thankful for that. However, I am concerned regarding disabled adaptations and note the challenges. However, knowing from personal engagement with people in my community, I know that having an adaptation is vital for their health and well-being, and I need this not to be just a priority in terms of maintaining care at home. It's a fundamental human right to have access to a bathroom, toilet, getting on and off the toilet, showering, washing oneself without danger of falling, etc. Also, it's a person's dignity. So, can I ask our services, even in these challenging times, and when you're going to review this service, to look at the priority, take into account the whole person with their rights, and make sure this work is done as soon as possible for all. We must be proactive rather than reactive when installing these adaptations. This may prevent people going into care. Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much, Councillor Binney. Would you like to take that, Mr. Gardner or Mr. Folleringham?
I don't disagree with anything that Councillor Binney said, Chair. Absolutely. I fully appreciate the position that some tenants are in. And as I've highlighted in the report, we're not where the service wants to be right now. However, if there are any situations that require a quick turnaround to enable adaptive living, then the service will do its utmost to turn that around as quickly as it possibly can with the resources that it has. But I say the longer term approach, or the kind of medium term approach, if you like, is to deliver a framework that will enable us to use the services of third parties as well as our own.
Okay, thanks very much. Is that you okay with that?
No, I'm fine with that, and I know they're working towards that, but it really was more about the priority. I think we need to look at the whole person and being proactive rather than reactive. we have to look at that, and we have to make these adaptations as urgent as we can be. But I totally appreciate all the work our services do. Thank you.
Agreed, thank you. Now go to Councillor Ansell.
Thank you, convener. I have a couple of questions and an observation. But first of all, I'd like to commend, like Councillor Binney, the refreshing and frankness of this report. It gives us so much more information, and it helps us with feedback to our constituents as what's actually going on behind the scenes. We have similar aspects in the railway. Observation first is basic. I'll bring that first because it's basically on the back of Councillor Binney. It's much the same aspect as Councillor Binney has just alluded to. However, I'm observing it from a Veterans Champions point of view, because I get a lot of emails from constituents, from veterans who are amputees and what have you, and need disabled adaptions to help them fit back into the community again. So the observation is mainly to highlight that point. The two questions, firstly, when void properties. When void properties come back on, the properties come back into the void, whether it's a bought back council house or a tenant has moved on, is there a process for inspecting what work has been done, and is it up to the standard? Because I know it says that falls below standard is flagged up, recorded and addressed with the contractor. I just want to know what the process is and how this is addressed. It would be my first question.
Okay, Mr. Fotheringham.
All void properties that come back into for reletting go through the void lettable standard. The void lettable standard was updated in 2015 to a significant improvement, and all aspects of the void are then brought back to that lettable standard. So the answer is yes, they are.
Thank you for that. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you for that. It's just that I know of occasion where this hasn't happened, but that's an issue I'd like to take offline with you, Robert, at some point. If not before Christmas, at least in the new year. The other question is quite similar. We're doing a lot more, obviously, because of the vacancies and what have you, of putting more out to contractors. The question's fairly similar. The contractors come in and do the work. What's the process when they've done the work? Is there an inspection of their work? And if it's not up to standard, what's the process for that as well?
Within the voids, when the multi-trade service provider has completed the work, all void properties are 100% post-inspected. And if there's any recall work, that's then identified and passed back to the service provider, and that's targeted to be completed within 24 hours. So it's 100% inspection prior to any payment getting made.
Thank you for that. My last comment regarding that would be, again, I know of instances where there's still work outstanding. So again, I'll take that offline with you. So my final comment would be, I noticed under the capital, we've got a number of programs going on, such as roofing and rough casting. Does this include, does this include void properties?
The capital programme is mainly for the external fabrics of the building, the roofing, the rough casting, the pathways. As I said, the void lettable standard back in 2015 was significantly improved. Again, a number of aspects of that, the buildings, because of the age profile. There's a lot more plaster work gets carried out, replacement of floors, aspects that would be picked up from the capital aspect of kitchen and bathroom replacements. They are then caught at this stage as well to ensure that there's minimum delays for the incoming tenant when they come in. So it's mainly the external fabrics that get caught from BMD, from the capital programme, from there.
Thanks, Robert. I really appreciate that. And like I say, I'll drop you an email in the near future organise a meeting with you to discuss more specifics, because the specifics are not for this meeting. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anslow. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Convener. Just to echo on your opening comments, Convener, I totally agree with the comments you made. I'd like to not get too involved in the background, but there's a couple of wee details. If I could ask some specific questions of Mr. Fotheringham. It's to do with 5.2. It's the void properties, Robert. We're sitting 153, still far too many. How do we attend addressing the issue of the number of where I'm coming from? Denny Boy, you'll know where I'm talking about. In Duke Street, we have don't want to get too specific, but we have a number of properties there which are they'll be long-term voids. They're because of structural defects. Is that right? Kenny told me something. Is that right?
The way the void process works, will be a number of properties potentially that's structural. They'll still be dealt with by the housing operations team, and then at the stage they've maybe addressed that issue, they'll then get passed over to BMD to go through and be brought back to the void lettable standard. From there, so properties at Duke Street haven't been passed over to BMD. They're still at the stage where they're getting addressed by the housing operations team. That number of 153 is referred to. BMD and would always like to operate with a number between 90 and 110. So the figure was, at the start of the year, it was over 300. We have drilled that down, made significant progress. Some properties do come to BMD and then there's a structural issue can be discovered, maybe alterations to a loft or whatever. So again, at that stage, BMD would then enlist the assistance of the structural engineer to resolve these issues and move them forward. I can't give you a specific now on Duke Street, but I could certainly come back to you on that. I could speak to my colleague in housing.
The reason for asking it, Robert, was I thought Mr. Gillespie had mentioned about Duke Street that there was a kind of long-term issue problem there, and I was just wondering if there was a way to be taking them out of the, rather than you reporting here for 153 voids, if you could take 10 or 20 of those out, because they are going to be long-term. So technically, they're not really voids. They're even worse than voids, if you like, and it could have been a way of taking them away from that number. I was just curious on it, Robin, that was all. Picking up on, check the number. Yeah, picking up on Councillor Anslow's point on 5.4, disabled adaptations. I think it's a positive move, BMD carrying out the modifications, but I also find it a wee bit frustrating that we can't be doing these alterations ourselves. Again, is there any way of improving the installation times for these disabled adaptations?
Again, as mentioned within the report, BMD have commenced the building maintenance review, and during the review, every employee was brought in. There was discussions with Malcolm, Douglas and myself on how we see the service going forward and how there's a number of aspects that need to improve. One of the areas that we did hit on was absenteeism, and since we've had the sessions, the absenteeism has significantly improved. So with that in mind, the proposal going into the new year is to put an additional squad on the disabled adaptations. So there is positivity coming from the start of the review. So in January, we hope to have an additional squad put on, our own internal squad, so that will help a number of the priority cases and bringing the numbers down.
That's good to hear, Robert. And I didn't pick that up from the report. What I was picking up, I don't have any solution for this, guys. I mean, you're talking about, the increase in construction and wages externally that we're not able to match. So I've got every sympathy for you guys trying to fill these vacancies, if you like, So I'm aware that you have been under pressure, but it's good to hear that you've managed to potentially get another squad out there. I think that's me, Convener. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, just a quick point. We're looking to put stuff out to third-party contractors and things. How cost effective is it to do that compared to what the council would be able to do themselves?
Ideally, I would always want to retain in-house services. I've been here 37 years, started as an apprentice joiner, so I'm really about in-house services. But again, we've got to be realistic. We've got to meet the tenants' expectations out there, what they're looking for, and provide that service for housing. Again, with cost comparisons, we put out, put out a framework. The costs are benchmarked against BMD costs to ensure that we are getting value for money when we're putting these contracts out. There's some aspects with the skill shortage we have got out there. Recently coming out of the pandemic, there has been material cost increase as well. So there is a balanced approach to take there. Ideally, we would like to retain these services in-house, but again, we've not got that luxury at present. We are mentioned in the BMD review, we are looking at additional bolt-on skills for our staff, which could see an increase in their salary, which may reverse the trend of the number of employees leaving and help us to recruit staff back into these positions. So there's a piece of work ongoing with that now. We've also increased our apprentice intake to bring in clients' kids for the community. And we've also engaged in a placement programme with the Inclusion and Wellbeing Unit, the Education Training Unit, and with the schools, where we've managed to secure additional 3 apprenticeships, and they've been ring-fenced each of these areas to give the community feel for bringing staff back in. And we do hope if we get the bolt-on skills package through, that will assist training these youngsters up and then retain them within the service.
Fantastic. I was going to follow up about apprenticeships, but you answered it for me. Thank you.
There you go. Any other questions? I don't have any general questions, but I'll go to Councillor Bush in a minute. But I think the review that's coming forward will probably cover everything anyway. So that's when we see the review, we can make any comment. But it's the right direction to travel, I think we need to have this review. So I'll go to Councillor Bush as a portfolio holder for any comments you'd like to make.
Thank you, Provost. Firstly, can I congratulate Robert on his recent promotion? I've worked with Robert for a number of years now, and I've found him always to be a first-class officer, and I'm sure in his new position he'll help to develop the service really, really well. So again, congratulations to you on that. To let you know, it's not all going to be nice in what I'm going to say, because Douglas and I have had a number of conversations recently, and we are going to be setting up very regular meetings. I've probably asked Malcolm to come into a number of them. He doesn't need to be there all the time, but a number of them. And you've asked some questions, I've asked a lot more, as I'm sure Douglas will tell you.
We're trying to be kind today.
Well, to be honest with you, the service needs the support. It is a good service. It needs the support.
Yep.
It needs the questions asked and looked at. And I know this is a scrutiny panel, but as portfolio holder, I need to scrutinise what's coming from them as well. We hope to by working together on that side and following up from today, that we'll start to see BMD turning. They have met challenges. You have heard me, Robert. It's not something new from me, but you've heard me saying that there was a problem in Brexit when we lost a lot of labour, and the construction industry lost a lot of labour, and the prices for that went up. Materials went up. We also had a severe problem, and I think this was through private and public industry, following on from the pandemic, when you had people of my own age who were anywhere near retirement age, and they got a fright and they took it. That has caused a brain drain on the construction industry in particular. I've noticed it over between public and private. So the challenges at BMD are very similar to what other parts of the construction industry are suffering from. The solutions possibly are pretty similar as well, but the conversations I've had with Douglas so far have been really constructive, and I think we can see a really positive way going forward. Robert will be tied in with that, and also Douglas, Malcolm as well. That these people will make this work, and they will do everything that they possibly can. I think the staff will as well. I think credit at times. People forget to credit them because they are working really hard. They are very short-staffed, and it's really looking at how we can use our resources best, how we can get best results. Yes, there'll be some short wins, and I've got to say that and I think Douglas covered that on the adaptations, but I think it's putting in a long-term solution. So as the service moves forward, it's got a long-term service which will serve the people of Falkirk as best they can. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bruce. Certainly, I couldn't agree more. That the good work that's done sort of at the coalface, if you like, by electricians, plumbers, joiners, everybody trying to do their very best with the position we're in at the minute. And I always get some good news stories come back on how the joiner or the electrician has went the extra mile and stuff like that and helped the tenants out in different ways. So I totally commend the workforce, and I understand where we are and I understand the points that Councillor Bounce has made. And it's all businesses have been affected, so it's a journey, but the main thing is we've got a spotlight on it and we're looking at it, and I'm sure with Councillor Bounce as a portfolio holder will be driving that forward. So the scrutiny would be asking that a report comes back in about a year following the review, and then we can ask the questions then. So the recommendations are note the current performance levels of the service, note the progressive work undertaken, including the external review by the division to address and improve service delivery. So can we agree on the recommendations?
Agreed.
So can I just clarify, because you fortunately said two things there. We're agreeing the recommendations and to call for a report.
Yes.
In a year's time. So just to make that clear, that's the decision. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody for your attendance, and just remains for me yet again to say I hope you have a nice Christmas.
Oh, thank you. Same to you.
Yeah, but time off.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you very much.
Thank you.